Hello and welcome to another dose of Dr. Owen's Muscle Medicine. This video is all about the popular fitness supplement HMB, what it does, how it works, and what safety evidence exists to support its use. Let's begin. Firstly, what is HMB? HMB, aka beta-hydroxy beta-methylbutrate, is a chemical we produce at around rates of 0.3 grams per day as one of several potential breakdown products of leucine, an essential amino acid that is also of interest to gym-goers, athletes, and sports scientists because leucine acts as a firing gun of muscle protein synthesis. Leucine is an essential amino acid, meaning we must eat it, as we cannot produce sufficient amounts of it ourselves. Much of the leucine in our diets is incorporated into protein structures such as skeletal muscles, with a small amount being converted into alpha-ketoisocaproate, or KIC for short, and some of this is then converted by the enzyme KIC-dioxygenase into HMB, with the majority of KIC being metabolized via other pathways. As such, only a small fraction of available leucine will be converted into HMB, hence the interest in supplementing HMB directly to achieve supra-physiological levels of the stuff over and above what could be attained simply by a high leucine diet or supplementation. Now, HMB has been a popular sports supplement since the 1990s when one of the original researchers, Stephen Nissen, liked what he saw in his studies, so he built a biotech company specifically around formulating HMB supplements and placing patents on them. It's been continued to be used and studied in the subsequent 30 years and has even been studied in conjunction with creatine supplementation, with promising results that the two can be used synergistically, with creatine working as an additional energy buffer, allowing a few more reps per set, which multiplies out over time as increased volume of work, and a greater training stimulus for hypertrophy, with HMB acting to reduce muscle damage, improve recovery, and to gently nudge our muscles into more of a state of net muscle protein synthesis over muscle protein breakdown. Thrilling stuff, but not really the purpose of this video. Let's get back to how HMB works. So how does it work? Well, thankfully it's been swirling around long enough for scientists to have figured out a fair bit about its mechanisms of action. Firstly, it gets in the way of something called the ubiquitin proteasome pathway, which is an informatively named process in which unneeded or damaged proteins within our cells are tagged with a molecule called ubiquitin, thus named because it's everywhere, which marks it as a substance ready to be broken down by a proteasome, which is a large protein complex that breaks down proteins. Thanks HMB, that's great. But that's not all. As well as doing this to get in the way of muscle protein breakdown, HMB also stimulates muscle protein synthesis. It does this by activating the mTOR, or mammalian target of rapamycin signaling pathway, that's commonly referenced by proponents of anti-aging medications such as rapamycin and intermittent fasting advocates as something we might want to downregulate or switch off to live a long old while. In an aggressively brief explanation of something quite complicated, mTOR in muscle cells stands as the gatekeeper for a potential cascade of intracellular protein manufacture. Switch mTOR on and watch the entire machinery of the cell wear into action, creating proteins to grow the muscle cell. Switch it off and less stuff happens more slowly. HMB seems to weakly switch it on. So that's pretty dope, because the whole game of building muscle can be expressed as a constant battle to exist in an overall state of net muscle protein synthesis rather than one of net muscle protein breakdown. Sounds pretty helpful. What else? Oh yeah, HMB seems to reduce muscle soreness and damage, and at least in part this seems to be a consequence of HMB supplementation increasing cholesterol synthesis, as we saw on the previous slide, in muscle cells. And these fats are then incorporated into the cell walls, promoting cell wall stability when placed under physical stress. Neat. So we understand that under laboratory settings, HMB does all these wonderful things to bodily processes. This leads us to the question, does HMB supplementation work at sufficient scale so we might expect appreciable real-world differences in muscle mass and soreness? Well, this is a pretty big topic and the data is somewhat inconsistent. In fact, they'll probably do with a whole video of its own. Oh look, here's one of those now. For now, what we can say confidently is that it pairs well with progressive resistance training, particularly in untrained individuals, to help build muscle mass and strength whilst decreasing muscle damage and soreness, as measured by objective biomarkers and reported subjective scores of muscle soreness. However, the effect sizes of this, which are discussed more in the video linked, are quite small and are contingent on some other factors. Next, is it safe? Well, it seems that way, with one study looking at 6 grams per day, twice the usual dosing protocol of 3 grams per day, finding no significant effects on blood cholesterol or markers of liver and kidney function. Further, the large-scale systematic reviews and meta-analyses done to date failed to find any glaring concerns, but it's important to note that almost all of the studies incorporated therein used a 3 grams per day divided dose protocol for no more than 3 months. And that's the end of the video. HMB is certainly a molecule of some interest, and supplementation is certainly capable of influencing important biological processes occurring in our muscles, but the extent to which this occurs only sometimes reaches scientific statistical significance, and whether or not it's of any significance to you will depend on whether you pair it with significant progressive resistance training, what dose you take, for how long you take it, and how well adapted your muscles already are for the work you're undertaking. That's all for today's video. Thank you for watching, and please consider checking out my video reviewing the human studies measuring HMB's effectiveness over here. Thanks.